Well, good evening, everybody. Looks like there's a few of you out there tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Andy and I are gonna take it tonight. John is a little bit under the weather, and so he reached out to the two of us and kind of handed off the baton to us. So we're happy to be here and glad that you've joined us. And we've got a number of things we can talk about relative to Nebraska Cornhusker athletics. So, hey, Andy, did you watch the game last night, the national championship game?
Nah, I didn't really feel like it. What else should we talk about? No. Of course I did. The one thing I was hoping for, I'm pretty sure Lightning couldn't strike a third time because those semifinal games were both fantastic. Like the one that didn't go overtime might have been more exciting than the one that did. And this one, I got to give Washington credit. It looked like they were just going to get rolled out of there those first couple of drives. And then what was funny was the defense made adjustments, shut them down for a long time. There's actually a stretch where after, getting drummed right away, they'd outscored them 10-3 over a couple of periods there. Or a couple quarters, but yeah, in the end they just kind of pulled away. It wasn't, unless you're a Michigan fan, it probably wasn't a super exciting experience, but hey, it worked for them, didn't it?
Well,
little scouting paid off, huh?
Yeah, a little scouting. Yeah, a little scouting paid off.
Yeah, I mean, and this is going to come up a lot, but I'm certain right now that if you went to your local bookie and said, hey, what kind of odds can I get on that title getting vacated? That's probably going to go off at about 1 to 8. Because there's just so much evidence right out there in the open, and who knows what else they've been digging up behind the scenes. So yeah, they're not going to get to keep that. I mean, Southern Cal basically had to vacate one of their titles because Reggie Bush wouldn't pay an agent back when he went with somebody else. So here's like a staff and the team. I'm sorry, don't give me this nonsense about, hey, the players didn't know anything about it. It's like, what, they just thought their coordinators were witches? It's like, God, they just keep making the right guesses. This guy's amazing, till after Stallions got fired. But yeah, I mean, it's going to happen. And in a way, for kind of a chaotic season, what a perfect ending that there's not going to be a title holder for it. What'd you think, Todd?
I didn't watch it.
Really? Not a bit.
I took a vow, when Florida State didn't get in, and I said, this is bullshit. I'm not going to watch any bowl games. I'm not going to watch any of it. And so I didn't. I didn't watch any bowl games. I didn't watch any of the playoff. And what I did watch is, and I think I've got I'm kind of lagging here, but what I did watch was Montana and South Dakota State. So I watched the FCS championship game, which, in my opinion, is how they ought to run the playoffs. But I just was frustrated by the whole damn thing, and so I didn't watch it. And also, that isn't to say I didn't pay attention to what's going on. I mean, I didn't crawl into a cave, but I really did not want to see Michigan win. What bothers me the most about that is that they had an organized, structured system of cheating that, people can say all they want to about stealing signs. Everybody does it. Well, you know what? Everybody doesn't do it, or at least to the extent maybe that Michigan did. And to do that, they violated other rules to do it. And I'm with you. I think that the NCAA is going to hopefully come through here and force them to vacate the championship. Well, big deal. They're still going to fly a banner, wherever they fly their banners at Michigan, and still claim that they won it. But I don't know. I'm just disgusted by it all. Harbaugh, again, everybody wants to minimize things. He was suspended for 3 games at the start of the season for lying to the NCAA, it was more than buying a hamburger for a recruit. It was a bigger deal than that. So he's just a cheater, and the hell with him. Get the hell out of college football. Go coach, the San Diego Chargers, whoever he's going to end up with, and just get out of there. And I guess the last thing, Michigan, man, you aren't superior to anybody else, and you condone that. So I got no respect for Michigan, man, out there.
Cool. And here's where Michigan even takes it to dirtier lengths. And here's the thing about Harbaugh is there's multiple infractions, smaller ones before this, and each time it's like he can never take the blame. It's either no, I didn't know anything about it, or it's always somebody else's fault. And I would think Michigan, man, that kind of talk is, hey, own your mistakes. And I think he's just physically incapable of doing it. There's just something in his actual wiring inside his head. But the thing that Michigan does is it wasn't so much that, here's the deal. They actually had teams of people flying them to these games, putting them up, having them record the other sideline. And the thing is, they found them on the stadium cameras. And here's Connor Stallions. They've got footage of him just sitting there photographing the other sideline. And no, everybody doesn't do that. And the first hint that everybody doesn't do that, because they're trying everything to make it look like they're blameless. And the first part of that is, no, here's how you know everybody didn't do that, because 13 other coaches in the conference went fucking batshit and went to the conference commissioner and are like, you do something. If everybody's doing that, no one wants to dive in to point the finger at anybody, because they don't want somebody shining a light at them, like, say, Michigan, who the Burgers for Kids, that was a Michigan that was like a social media trail they started, or whatever, not trail, but just started putting it out with multiple, Michigan accounts, Michigan grad accounts, that kind of thing, and literally had the country thinking, it's just buying burgers for some kids. That is ridiculous. Well, it wasn't. It was lying to investigators about holding illegal practices and illegal recruiting, times you shouldn't have been doing either. Guess what? Scott Frost did the thing with the practices. Did you do it? Yeah. Here it was. Okay, you can't coach practice for a couple of weeks or whatever, or something like that. Now, they had they were ready to make a 4-game deal with Harbaugh, which, lying to investigators, that's not a bad deal. That's like their most serious crime. And the only problem was, on an article I read, it stated that the NCAA yanked that offer because they didn't like that it was about buying kids burgers shit. And so they're like, you know what? No, we're going to go ahead and hand it out. So the 3 games he served at the beginning of this year were self-imposed. And they said they did it with the understanding they expect the NCAA to put a few more on. My guess would be 3 more next year. Well, now for next year, here they are. They're going to get pretty pissy again, because what are they doing? They actually started like a false info campaign saying, breaking, Ohio State's about to be jacked up for like raiding people's iCloud accounts or whatever, other teams' iCloud accounts. Totally false. Everywhere you see it, hit the guy. It's Michigan alum, Michigan fan. And so it's like they're doing it again. Here they are, just because they hate Ohio State, because it may be true Ohio State hired the investigators that found it out. Well, guess what? If you weren't doing anything, then Ohio State just would have wasted money. But so now they get back at them by saying, okay, now they're cheating too, even though there's no evidence to that. Nothing like that happened. And anybody who watched the damned Ohio State game, knew they couldn't have possibly cheated because they looked so bad. So that's the thing. They're not just breaking rules, but then they're trying to spread lies to make themselves look better. And one last thing, they can take that us against the world shit and shove it right up their stinking brown eye, because you don't get to play the victim and the one who's overcoming such adversity if you caused your own adversity. It's like, that's your fault. You can't act like the world's against you. You got caught cheating. So there's my little rant. But
no, and Andy, I agree with you 100%. And on the flip side of that, though, and this is not, I guess I'm just kind of calling it as I see it. Michigan had a hell of a football team. I mean, this year they had a very, very good football team. Now, J.J. McCarthy, not the greatest team of all time, like he put out there on social media. But there's no question they were the best team in the country this season. I mean, they certainly were. And, you know, I don't know. I always cheered for Michigan. You know, they were a team I always cheered for, you know, unless they were playing Nebraska. And I don't know. It's just frustrating to me. And we're just going to leave it there. They're the national champions today. Yeah. And they'll probably be the national champions tomorrow. But I'm with you, Andy. I got to believe that, you know, something will end up in the end. And you know, they'll have at least an asterisk, if not their name, removed from that list. Let's stick with football a little bit more, and we've got some pretty good questions here that we'll get to in just a minute. But you know, to bring people up to speed a little bit, since I was last on, at least, Nebraska did pick up a couple of more players in the portal that it sounds like were really high priorities for the coaching staff. And, you know, way back at the end of the season, you know, some of us were pontificating, you know, if you go into the portal, who do they need to bring in? You know, and obviously all the conversation back then was quarterback. And we all know what happened with Dylan Raiola flipping and coming in. And so then we don't have a portal quarterback. But who we did bring in are a couple of skill position guys that it seems people are pretty high on. Dante Dowdell is a running back that played last year this past year as a freshman at Oregon. I think he's a native of Mississippi. Yes. People kind of compare him to a Gabe Ervin type of a runner, a bigger guy who runs north and south. That you know, hopefully Gabe Ervin, you know, does come back. But my goodness, that guy's been beat up. And then the other player of note that's come in was Isaiah. I don't know if I pronounced it right, but Isaiah Nayor, a wide receiver from Texas.
That sounds right.
Yeah, he also was at Wyoming, you know, and a guy who is one of those guys that is pretty dangerous with yards after catch. So, you know, kind of solidifying those two position groups. I was really pleased to see that they picked up another wide receiver, and apparently they're still looking at this real tall kid from Vanderbilt.
Wake Forest.
Wake Forest, excuse me.
Okay, yeah, Wake Forest.
Yeah, and Wake Forest, you're correct. They're both black and gold. But I think that those are key because while there's a lot of talent in that wide receiver room, there's a lot of youth, and you know, so hopefully these guys can come in and you know, some of those younger guys will come along and solidify that. So a couple of big new names. I just wonder, spring practice, there's going to be a lot of guys at spring practice, and it's going to be really, really interesting.
There's going to be some forced portal entries after spring.
I think you're right.
And I think he can still do that under the 18-month rule where like what if they just want to be, if they can keep the scholarship and go to school and get taken off the list, or they can, you know, transfer and play with another team. I think there's always a couple of guys that just quietly hang it up each year when they're told, you know, hey, dude, you're a fifth-year senior, you're not going to crack the top 3 or 4, and they're just like, well, I don't want to travel, I'll finish school. Now, is it Dowdell or is it Dowdle?
I don't know. I haven't heard anybody pronounce it.
Well, a couple interesting things on him. Did you see that they did the like commitment photo? He did that with Dylan Raiola, like sitting down, and he's flying through the air over the top of him. Looks like he's about 6 or 7 feet off the ground. And I read a little article about that, and they said, 1, that wasn't any special effects. He just flat can jump. And 2, he did it in 1 take. Like they got that in 1 shot, and they were done. And the other thing is he actually played against Malcolm Hartzog down in Mississippi. So they played each other, I think, like one time. And you go, how'd you do it? He goes, I think I scored 4 touchdowns and he scored 5. Said because he was a running back too, and just said, yeah, he was running all over the place and nobody could catch him. So he remembers Hartzog pretty well. And then now I'm taking a wary approach with Nyor because it sounds like he's either coming off one or two blown knees, kind of, maybe the Fedone situation. So I don't think he barely played at Texas because I think he's been hurt for 2 years. So again, Fedone. And so, that's just one of those things I'm going, well, if he's back to full speed and could, not have any rust and is ready to go. Cause oh man, with those ACLs, you can play again in a year, but it's like you're not up to full speed till the second year. It feels like in a lot of situations, which is why I'm really excited for Fedone next year.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I agree with you.
I'd really like to get the guy from Wake Forest because he sounds like a plug and play. And if something good happens with Nyor, then that can just be a Christmas gift because that's a long time to be out.
I'm going to just take a real quick time out here, folks. Without John here, and for those of you that came in after the opener, John is under the weather. He's not doing real good right now, and so he reached out to us and asked us to take this one on tonight. So that's why he's not here. And without him here and my lack of technical know-how, at least on my end, things seem to be kind of coming and going a little bit. So if somebody could throw in the comment, if I'm choppy or if I'm lagging, let me know. Or if Andy's choppy and he's lagging, just let us know real quick. I don't know how to fix it, but at least it seems to be kind of on and off on my end. Let's head. We've talked a bit about football. Let's head to a few of the questions right now. Linda, it's good to see you back. You bring up something that I've been wondering about a little bit as well, and we'll kind of start with this. Linda Wilkins says, first, I have a concern that the amount of Kool-Aid flowing now over Dylan Raiola is like when Scott Frost came to Nebraska. We thought it was the coming of the second Messiah. I've expressed that concern as well, Linda. He's a five-star quarterback, and he's at one point he was the top-ranked player in the country. There's a lot of accolades coming in about this kid. I am not a scout. I am not one of these people that can look at a kid who's 18 years old and forecast his future. I have been very, very concerned, and in a previous show, I was talking about how I was disappointed Chubba Purdy left. Understand why. I get it. But it sure would be nice to have someone with some more experience in that quarterback room that, can lend, I guess, can right the ship if need be. Dylan Raiola is in all likelihood going to be the starter on day one. I mean, in all likelihood, that first game, he's taking the first snap and going forward. But if he falters a bit or if he's injured, the next guy up is another freshman. And that
next guy up's Harburg. Harburg will be there. Kalen probably needs a couple years. Harburg.
So, I won't disagree with that, but it does concern me about that. And so I would like to see a little bit more experience there myself. But yeah, he's got the weight of the world on his shoulder.
Well, here's one thing. I'm going to jump in here because it looks like Todd froze up there for a sec. I will say this about Dylan Raiola. Before making any decisions, if you've got the Rivals or the On3 subscription, go in there and watch some of his tape. He's the real deal. This isn't you never. I guess you say you never truly know with a freshman, but I'd push in on him. He does not. And the thing is, it's not just the arm strength, the accuracy, the creativity, and all that. Is this guy's got, for everything I read, just has a football IQ that's off the charts. So like his little brother Dayton, who we've offered, says he wants him to be tested to see if he's got the photographic memory. He thinks his brother has a photographic memory, and so there's the head to go with the talent. And then you look at this. He grew up, around a guy who, whose name is on the stadium at Nebraska and who played like, what, 12, 13 years with the Lions. Matt Stafford is known as Uncle Matt to the family. So this is a kid who understands 100% what he's getting into. I think a lot of times with freshmen is they're ready to conquer the world while everybody's recruiting them and kissing their ass, and then they hit campus with some grown ass men and get a little reality check and need some time to kind of blend into that world. And where I think Rail is ready to go. I mean, he did a workout that I guess like he had a connection to Pat Mahomes. I guess he'd been introduced to him at some point. He bugged around till somebody gave him the name. I think this is his junior year. Gave him the name to Mahomes' trainer, and wanted to know what's Pat. I understand Pat Mahomes like has a 6 a.m. daily workout. Give it to me, and just like hounded the guy, and then got it and started doing that workout. People are worried about the 4 high schools in 4 years. I will tell you this: when he went to Buford to be closer to Georgia, that was a step up. That was a big step up in competition, and he had something like 26 TDs and 1 pick. And so he kind of answered that bell. I believe this until it's usually, hey, show me. This time I'm like, I think this is the real deal. I like what I read about him. The Buford coaching staff would meet at like 8 a.m. on Sundays to go over their offensive and defensive planning for that next weekend's game. And they said he was showing up, sitting in with like the offensive coaches, going over all that with them every Sunday. And they've never had a player do that. And said he just kind of goes like, when you get, I want to be in on the planning, when you do it. And they're like, 8 a.m., like Sunday morning, you may not want to do that. Nope, be there. And so he says the right things. So like I said, some people, the 4 high school thing, the 2D commitments. Well, reading everything, the 2D commitments were about he always kind of wanted to be at Nebraska. And actually, I was a little stunned he did pick Georgia. I thought Nebraska was about a done deal at that time. So I was happily surprised, but I wasn't shocked that at the end he wanted to come here, because that sounded like what he really wanted to do. So while there's some of that on the outside, you watch him, he never like says or does the wrong thing, outside of decommitments. And I just think he's got like a maturity level beyond his years. If you listen to him talk, one of the first things he said was, I want to start getting to know the offensive linemen, because I feel like they've gotten some crap when things didn't go right the last couple of years. And I want everybody to know these guys are rock stars and everybody should treat them that way. So he wasn't even talking about, what he wanted to do. He's like, I want to start getting, more respect for the offensive linemen. And one last quick thing about 4 different high schools, who did that also was Taylor Martinez. He got bounced around to 4 different schools. And I think somebody from CornNation got to interview him like after his senior year of football ended, and asked him, hey, you and Bo used to go at it a little. Were you ever thinking of transferring? And he was like, God, hell no. It was the first time he'd made friends since like middle school. He's dating John Cook's daughter for a while there. And he said, no, you couldn't have dragged me out of Lincoln. I love the place. So I think you might be looking at something like that with Dylan, where it's like he's finally going to put down roots. And guess who the Nebraska loving kid in the family was even more than him? Like Dominic in an article said, yeah, he goes, it's Dayton that's had the Nebraska stuff just hanging in his room since he was like 5 years old. So I mean, 2031, it might become Rayola Field at Memorial Stadium. Who knows? But yeah, I'm fired up for the kid. I don't think he's smoking mirrors.
Well, hopefully he's not. And, I do appreciate, though, Linda's perspective here a little bit. And, then she followed up, Rayola has the weight of the state on his shoulders. And if he does not meet the expectations, they'll run him out of the state like Frost. Linda, I don't know that it would come to that. To be quite honest with you, if Dylan Raiola doesn't meet the expectations, he will be benched. And then he and his family, they'll make a decision as to whether or not he stays. It's a little bit different than it's Scott Frost under, because Scott Frost was under a contract for a certain number of years here. Did the state turn on Scott Frost? I think a lot of fans did. And, I'm kind of scrolling through the comments. I know a lot of you have weighed in on this.
For the third time they turned on him.
Yeah.
They turned on him 3 different times.
Exactly.
When he went to Stanford. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I know that everybody thought Scott Frost was going to do it. Well, I've done this before, and just so I can pat myself on the back and feel good about myself before I go to bed tonight, I was not one who wanted to hire Scott Frost. I was not that guy who stood up and
I'm
said,
guilty.
"Bring Scott Frost." I was not in that camp, but nonetheless, Linda, I do appreciate where you're coming from with that, and I think I think there is some legitimate concerns with that. But Andy, pays a lot of attention to that, and there's a lot of people that say Dylan Raiola is going to come in and just be fine. I'll tell you this: the kid has an impact because he came up last week while they were bringing some of these 5 guys in to take a look at campus. He showed up at basketball games. He showed up at wrestling meets. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit. But he's a one-man recruiting service, I think.
Yes.
Anyway, let's throw this one up from David Matney. Just kind of on that subject of football. When we are good again, can we please run up the score on Michigan and Colorado? We need to throw sportsmanship out the window. Yes. I don't want to throw sportsmanship out of the window, but I would like to see us whoop them. There would be nothing better than to whoop both of those teams.
Rain late touchdowns, well, especially Colorado. I mean, that's a hate that goes back decades. I'm not like you where I cheered for Michigan. I never cared for them because where Ohio State kind of has that, we're gonna, guys in jorts are gonna key your car when they see the out of town plates. Michigan's just kind of always had that just ungodly arrogance about them. Like when all the cheating goes down, all of a sudden it feels like everybody who ever walked on the campus had a law degree all of a sudden. No, I'd be all for running the score up, and I say, run the score up, and just keep the clock running. Let the clock run a little. Don't go in a hurry up, but we weren't rushing. We can't put these kids in and just take knees. Come on, guys. But I always, whenever I hear the running up story, it's like I think this might have been the year we beat Florida. And as I've made the mistake of wearing Georgia hats on here a couple of times, my dad and my uncle went there, and I called my uncle up before I left for Arizona for that bowl game. And that year, I think it was like Florida was leading Georgia 45-7 late because Spurrier just had he didn't even try to hide how much he hated Georgia because they whooped on his ass his senior year when he won the Heisman. I think Bill Stanfield sacked him 5-6 times, but he ran a damn flea flicker with 35 seconds left, and so they won 52-7. And they asked him,
I can't tell if it's just me or if Andy's gone now. So are you still there, Andy?
I see me. But they win 52-7, and a reporter asked him why he'd do that, and he said, "Because I just want to know what it felt like to hang 50 on Georgia." And that's what I'd love to do to Dion and company.
Well, and Otis Modus, I think this is the first time you've joined us, Otis. Otis says college football has been an oxymoron for years now. I agree with that. Student athlete, I'm not sure that those, it's changed so much. It's a different world. And
not college football, but amateur football. But, I say pay them as much as anybody's willing to pay them. The schools in the NCAA have all had chances to take control of this for years, and instead they chose the scorched earth path. And I'll tell you this: some people are just going to always be furious that kids playing college football make more, that they should be grateful for the scholarship. But you look how many billions of dollars it brings in, and it's for me, I'm that's fine. Don't pay the players, but then the coaches can only make $75,000 and they have to coach a class. No TV deals, no TV money, and $5 to get in. Then great. Then we're all on the same page. But I just find it absurd that, hey, that guy making a scholarship, he shouldn't be allowed to make any more money. It's and the coach makes $10 million a year, and the school just makes millions and billions, and to say that they don't get a, and they're even now with the NIL, they're oh my God, some kids are making $1 million. I'm those kids probably deserve to make about 10 million. It's
well, and
because right now it's not even costing the school anything.
Right. Going to throw this one up here from Fred. Fred Sacco throws out, so did Duncan Aviation fly Dana Holgerson to an apartment in Lincoln per Cox cable installer, saying he saw a Heisman Trophy on the table? Now, Fred, I don't know squat about Duncan Aviation. I don't know anything about a Cox cable installer, and I haven't seen a Heisman Trophy just sitting around on somebody's table. But what I do understand is that Dana Holgerson was at the Devaney Center on Saturday afternoon. He was at the wrestling meet, and it came out shortly after that Matt Rule's having some conversations about possibly bringing Dana Holgerson onto the staff. Now, for those of you that might not be familiar, Dana Holgerson was his most recent coaching position was the head coach for the Houston Cougars. Before that, he was a head coach at West Virginia. He had winning records in both places, but he was an offensive coordinator for a few years and quarterback coach prior to that. And he's kind of from that Mike Leach tree a little bit. He's had some experience at Texas Tech when Mike Leach was there. Nonetheless, if he's here, and based upon what has being, hypothetical, is that maybe Dana Holgerson will become a quarterback coach and fill some other kinds of roles with the team. What do you think? What do you think, Andy? If Dana Holgerson were to join this staff, is that a pro? Is that a con? Or is that just a break even?
For me, it's a high pro. His teams, were known for like 49-47 type games. His teams put points up, and like you said, he's got a history of being a quarterback coach. I don't think like Rule makes him a co-offensive coordinator. Maybe that's a little bit of a slap after telling everybody that Satterfield, he's going to retain him, or maybe he had that talk with Satterfield. Who knows? If he's just coming in as a quarterback's coach, I'm sure he's going to be something / if not just quarterback coach, it'll be something / quarterback coach. And I just absolutely love the idea of having him in where he gets to spend a lot of time grooming Raiola, grooming Danny Kaelin, and actually giving Heinrich Haarberg probably the most attention he'd had, until like say last spring, where, hey, we got this quarterback on staff that nobody's ever actually trained as a quarterback yet. It sounded like. It sounded like Whipple wouldn't give him the time of day, but yeah, I'm fired up one way or another. He's a hell of an offensive mind, and if you got a guy like that these young quarterbacks can work with right away, as opposed to nobody. Answer me this: why, when you have about the same amount of guys at the position, maybe a couple more, why do you have a dedicated tight ends coach before you have a dedicated quarterbacks coach? That one was a head scratcher.
The only reason I can see that is if your coordinator is a quarterback coach. I mean, if your coordinator if your offensive coordinator has come through the ranks as a quarterback coach, then I wouldn't have a problem with the coordinator coaching quarterbacks.
That feels like not enough time in the day there.
And perhaps, but I mean, you were saying, why would you pick one or the other? That would be the circumstance that I would see having a tight end coach. Otherwise, I don't understand having a tight end coach either.
Yeah. Either give him just put him in make it, the receivers coach, or if you really want somebody to focus them a little more, then have the offensive coordinator maybe do that in his spare time. But I'd put them all in the receiver room, and then by God, get a quarterback coach.
Andy,
did we ever need a dedicated quarterback coach more in like the modern Nebraska football history than last year? Those guys
probably not
coaching. Holy God.
Andy, here's another one. Vince Watson asked this question, and I think it's a good one here. Vince Watson says, is the Raiola family moving to Nebraska or staying in Georgia to develop little bro? Well, I think the Raiola family certainly is in a financial position, and with whatever Dominic does with his life, I think they're pretty mobile. I've not heard anything about them relocating to Lincoln or to Nebraska at all yet.
I haven't either. And they've got Donovan here too.
Yeah,
and
so
maybe you know maybe it wouldn't be the best look if Dominic was kind of looming over everything in Lincoln. You know, and he's, from what I can tell, he's a good guy and a good dad, and that wouldn't be, you know, that wouldn't be the issue. But it'd be kind of strange if they just moved there to watch him play college football. Yeah, because I mean, I'm assuming, is Dayton probably at Buford? Did he move out there with them, or is he back in Arizona? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know. I don't know either. I haven't heard. We'll throw this one up here from Seth Floyd, a $5 post for us here. Go Blue. That's all. Well, Seth, we'll take your $5. Thank you very much. And
hey,
you know, yeah, you had the best team in the.
Yeah, you got a title for a while. Yeah, probably not. Probably if you're a Michigan fan, that would be the best This podcast wasn't the best one to kick it off with. What do we have here?
Joel Tilson says, "Did Frost get hired by?" He has not. Nope. That I've heard. I've not heard anything about that.
I'm wondering if he might kind of be doing the Bo thing and just trying to collect as much Nebraska money as he can. Did they lump sum pay him off though? I thought he got paid off in a lump sum. I didn't think he was doing the Bo like 3-year plan or whatever. Because Bo went and coached for like $150,000 at Youngstown for 3 years, and they had to pay the difference between that $150,000 and the $3 million a year for like the next 3 years or whatever Bo was owed. So that, and then the minute those 3 years were up, then he took like the LSU job or whatever. But yeah, Bo was very definitely sending a message there. I'm going to get another job and take your money. How do you like that?
Roger Moore throws out here, and I think we all agree with this as well. Roger Moore says, hope fans acknowledge the O-line is the key to Raiola. I got to get that right. Raiola. It's the key to his success. Yes, absolutely.
Hey, and the family's invested. You got the family fully invested there, don't you?
Well, sure you do. Yeah, you know, very true. Uncle Donovan better make sure that Dylan is well protected out there.
I tell you what, I was very happy with Donovan's first full calendar year with the team. I thought that the pass protection was awful at the start, but it got better as the year went on. And some of those games late, I mean, they were rolling guys. It wasn't every play, but there were multiple times where I'm going, I feel like I'm watching 95 because the whole line is just knocking people on their ass 8-9 yards downfield. It just started to show in flashes.
Flashes, we've still got a ways to go, but yeah. Like I've said, and I said it coming into this last year, and I'll say it, they'll probably really be beating this drum next year. We will have men on the offensive line who have played together, who have experience, and you can't beat that. So I'm optimistic about the offensive line. Hopefully they can stay healthy and make a difference. I really do.
And everybody stuck around too. I think everybody that could have gone stayed. Yeah, I have a feeling Corcoran's going to be coming back for a year on the bench, because I think Teddy out when they finally got Teddy in there and he got hurt. Teddy seemed to be playing much better than Corcoran was. But from what I understand, he probably needed that half a season, just that much more time to strengthen those injuries back up.
Well, let's talk for a minute about one of the big boys, but on the other side of the line.
Polar bear.
Roger Moore says, polar bear wrestler, who knew? Well, I knew. Nash Hutmacher was a 4-time South Dakota state champion. He was an undefeated state champion. He finished his career with 73 straight pins. He actually, and this is one thing I didn't know until just recently, he actually started wrestling varsity.
I love that.
That's a great one. But the polar bear started wrestling varsity when he was a 220-pound 7th grader. Now, in South Dakota, in the sport of wrestling, 7th and 8th graders are eligible to wrestle at the high school level. And apparently the head coach went to Nash's parents and said, your kid's good, real good. I think he could help us. And so at 220 pounds, he went out and apparently started his high school career. Now, just so you're aware, he made his debut Saturday against Wyoming. Kid he wrestled was 2-4, not the best,
right,
but nonetheless a college wrestler. Nash Hutmacher in the football roster was listed at 330 pounds. I'm going to guess at the end of the season he wasn't weighing 330 pounds. I would guess he was a little.
They said he lost 40.
Okay. They said he dropped 40 pounds to get down to the maximum weight of 285 pounds. Now, that seems like a lot, and it is. But just to put something in perspective here a little bit, my niece married a young man a few years ago who was the starting center for 3 years at Kansas State. And, you know, his target weight back then was 320. Had a hell of a time getting there. In fact, he said I don't think he ever did really get there. But he talked to me because I asked him, because when I saw him, you know, probably 9 months after the end of the season, he was not 300 pounds. I mean, he had lost quite a bit of weight. And what he said was, I dropped a lot of weight really fast when I could go back and eat normal, just to eat, you know, 3 normal meals a day.
Right.
Folks, these linemen, offensive linemen and the interior defensive linemen, they're pushing these guys to consume 9,000 calories in that ballpark a day. That's a lot. And, you know, simply trimming back on that is going to have an impact. Nonetheless, a couple of things, and then we'll get in on this. But I was at the wrestling meet on Saturday. Nash Hutmacher looked incredible. At 285 pounds, there was no gut on that guy. He
looked massive.
He was big. He looked massive. You know, and you've heard, those of you that have been on the show a few times, you've heard John talk about Gable Stevenson, who, you know, an incredible heavyweight from Minnesota, Olympic champion as a young man. This Nash Hutmacher looked an awful doggone lot like Gable Stevenson with his physique. And so I certainly could see, you know, maybe one of the reasons why Rule went along with this, because Mark Manning reached out to Rule and asked if he could approach Nash about wrestling. You know, maybe they are going to trim him down, and he's more of an Aaron Donald kind of a tackle. So I don't think, if anybody's worried about him taking that weight off, I don't think you need to worry about that. One other thing I want to say, and then I'll let you jump in here, Andy, is one of the first comments we had came from Mike Corgan. Who will Hutmacher wrestle versus Iowa? Looks like Iowa has several listed at 285. The heavyweight that's been wrestling for Iowa so far this year is Bradley Hill. Bradley Hill is an average Division I heavyweight. They should have had Tony Cassiope, who is a 3 or 4-time All-American. But Tony Cassiope was one of those kids from Iowa that got dinged in that whole gambling stuff, you know, when DCI and Iowa went after those athletes from Iowa and Iowa State. So Cassiope's out. Bradley Hill, I think Nash Hutmacher could beat Bradley Hill. But here's the kicker. Iowa also has a guy on their roster listed at 285 pounds named Ben Keuter, Keuter. He is a redshirt freshman who also is a linebacker on the football team, who is in the room working out now that football season's over. But he's wrestled on world level age group teams. He is an incredible wrestler. So I don't know who Nash Hutmacher may wrestle against Iowa. But here's what I do think. I think that the Iowa duel against Nebraska could come down to the heavyweight match. And in Devaney, do you think it would be insane if it comes down to the heavyweight match and the polar bear strolls out there on the mat? Holy moly.
No
that
pressure.
Would be bonkers.
Time of your life, kid.
Yeah.
What's that? Iowa lost a good player to that gambling. You know, what they always say on Seinfeld? Yeah, that's a shame. Anyway, so I did read an article where they interviewed Hutmacher and talked a lot about it. He said he talked about losing the weight, and it mirrors what you said. He said basically just eating normally. He said the first 20 pounds came off like nothing. just not having to cram that many calories in the body daily. And he said he's actually planning to probably come back next year like 20 pounds lighter than he played last year and be more agile. And I can't help it. You know, I drink the Roulade or whatever flavor we got each year. And I just have visions of like an Indomitian Sue type guy out there, because saw him dancing around a little. I mean, it's like he was massive. He looked mobile as hell running around after the match. And he looked quicker than that guy. And, you know, he was walking him backwards the entire time before he did that little leg sweep and took him down. And then he's just bouncing around like, you know, a gymnast or something after. And I'm just like, okay, you know, it's like I could actually see him at 285. But yeah, I think he's talking like coming down from like 325 or 30 to like 310 or something, 305.
Yeah.
But man, take that weight off. He appears to be just as freaking strong. Even looks a little scarier, I think. And then toss that speed in there and just, you know, get out of the way.
I was blown away by how athletic he was.
Right.
How he is, you know, and you don't get to see that on a football field necessarily, like you do in a wrestling guard.
Yeah, out of a nose guard. No.
Exactly. And I was really, really impressed with that. And I can see why he was a 4-time state champion. I mean, the kid knows how to wrestle. And very, very, very
somebody go after that match, they said, 167-0.
You betcha. Here's, you know, we're kind of on, we're not quite winding down yet, but here's one that I started, I wanted to come back to. And I think this is worth talking about here for a little bit, because we are volleyball fans at CornNation, and we certainly have some outstanding individuals on the staff who cover the sport of volleyball. You know, Andy's daughter is one, and we've just got some great people that cover the sport, so we really enjoy it. And Linda says, Allie Batenhorst entered the portal. Was she pushed out to make room for Landfair, transferring from Minnesota after stepping in for Krause and taking them to the finals? There's a lot in that question, Linda, but I think the simple answer is yes. I think that what I really wondered is, once they got the commitment from Landfair, whether they might consider moving Batenhorst to a middle. Now, I'm not a volleyball guy.
That's where you got Beeson, and I think she's got a solid backup too. And
well, no, I'm talking middle blocker because
gotcha.
Because of Maggie Mendelson.
Well, she didn't hardly play though.
Not much, but it would be depth at that position. That's all I wondered. True. But Landfair was Big Ten Player of the Year in 2022.
Well, here's the thing, and this happens a lot when you hear about, hey, so and so was traded. As people start thinking it's like, you know, high school football or something again, where we're going to play little Jimmy because he loves the game so much. You didn't get it out of Kalen, but you got it out of some Kalen fans. Like, why would we go after Dylan Rayola? I'd rather have Kalen and all this. And it's like, well, guys, here's the thing. Like in that case, he wasn't hurt at all. He still has a scholarship. He still has his NIL. You know, just competition just ramped up in a big way. And it's like, look, as much as we like to think, you know, hey, this homegrown team and all that, John Cook's job and Matt Rule's job is to go get the best players they can. And I'm sorry, you've chosen to play the two, probably, you know, two of the three highest profile sports at the school. They're going to go get the best player. It's not going to be about, well, we're going to keep her around because she's been here 3 years. It's like, no, we've got the Big Ten Player of the Year. And, you know, does that kind of stink for Allie? Yeah, but, you know, she's going to find another school. It's not going to be anything she's going to really enjoy, for sure. But when you choose to go try and play for the best, and obviously this is more volleyball right now than football, but when you go to play for that program, you go there knowing that the best competition of just about anywhere is going to be waiting for you. And you may start 1 year and they may bring somebody in better, and you're not going to start anymore. It's going to happen. It's not just going to be the same group of girls that come in as freshmen are not all there as seniors. And like Lexi, somebody talked about Lexi's son. It's like, yeah, by the time she transferred, she wasn't starting anymore, after being all conference and whatnot. So yeah, that's kind of the underneath. We all love our volleyball team, and look at them; they're having so much fun. They're playing at the highest competition level sport at the school right now. And John Cook is going to go find the best recruits he can every year. If as much as we don't like Texas winning, like with their all portal team, if he can get somebody good out of the portal, he is going to do it. He's going to try and put the best team he can on the floor every year. And that means you're going to say every year you're going to say bye to probably two or three gals on that team you really like. You had Joe Juravicius' daughter there. What a great story. He was really good friends with Rule, and they played together at Penn State. And The Athletic did a real nice article on her. And kind of between the lines, I'm like, yeah, well, she's saying the right things, but I'm reading between the lines. I get the feeling she's not thrilled at all about not playing this year. And I guess she really hated not getting put in the Memorial Stadium game. But yeah, you're going to be losing players from that team every year because they're going to go find better players before these gals have exhausted their eligibility.
Linda Wilkins does follow up with this, and I would agree with that too. I really hope she does not end up playing with the Texas Longhorns.
They got to be about full now. I think
I would think so, but
Penn State, where they seem to be drifting.
All of the Nebraska girls that have left have landed with solid, with solid programs, and they're gonna. I mean, two girls are with Penn State, Juravicius and I think Maddie Kubik.
Yep.
And or wait, who went to one of them went to Tennessee? That might have been Kubik.
Oh, okay, maybe that's what I was thinking of.
Mendelson and Juravicius are at Penn State.
Okay.
And Maddie Kubik went to Tennessee, and then Whitney Lowenstein, who was not part of the team this year, she is down at Texas. So,
Well, I was wondering too, is Mendelson still going to try to do the two sports things? Because she really wasn't playing much in either sport. And I'm just like, those two sports overlap a great deal. And it's like, so what are you actually just trying to run from one practice to another, or are you focused on one and practicing with one team, but just go play the games with the other? And yeah, I just don't know how that worked.
She's going to focus on volleyball. She said that, the first press release that came out when she announced that she was going into the portal, she said she wanted to focus on volleyball.
Okay. Because the scholarship was with basketball.
Was with basketball.
Yeah.
So, yeah. A couple other wrestling things have popped up, and gosh, I'm a wrestling guy, so I'm going to throw them up here. Joel Tilson says, wasn't Chris Taylor unbeaten and went to the Olympics? He was unbeaten in college.
Wasn't he like 405 pounds or something?
Yeah.
To the right guy.
He was incredible. And that was before they put a limit on heavyweight. Right. But yeah, I was a kid. I was a kid. And when he was wrestling at Iowa State, I got to see him a few times. I got his autograph 2 or 3 times. He was something else. He ended up getting a bronze medal at the Olympics. And there's an infamous picture of an Iranian who was about half the size of him doing a souffle, taking him straight over back. That was made into a poster. So, there is a little bit of infamy with Chris Taylor. And then somewhere in here, Fred Sacco asked, wrestling-wise, I'm not sure who was the heavyweight for Nebraska prior to Nash jumping in. Well, his name is Harley Andrews. And Harley Andrews is a redshirt freshman. He came from Oklahoma. Kid is a very good wrestler. He is a very good heavyweight, but he weighs 210, 215 pounds.
What's the next weight down from 285?
197, but that's where Silas Allred is. So, and maybe I'm a little light. He might be 220, but
that's giving up a lot.
It's given a lot of weight. But Harley Andrews, he ended up wrestling the match against UNI, the second match of the day on Saturday. But anyway, there's I'll just we're kind of getting close. We've got a few other comments we'll throw up here. Fred says Chris Taylor outdrank Andre the Giant in Omaha 135 beers in 1 hour to Andre's 129 or so. Yeah, I've heard those stories.
I've heard Andre's stories. Jesus.
Yeah, I can tell you that for those guys, you know, it had very little impact on them. Those guys were just so big.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I heard many Andre stories. I'll share one of them real quick. Andre, when Hulk Hogan was like an up and coming like rookie or whatever, he was touring Japan, and he was on the tour with Andre, and they'd just take, you know, the bus everywhere, and they'd ripped out like 3 or 4 rows of seats so Andre could sit in the back and stretch out, and they'd go get like a couple cases of tall boys, and Hogan sat in the seat in front of him, and as the rookie, it was his job to let the bus driver know when Andre was getting low, because they had a saying was that a sober Andre could get kind of grouchy, and so they had the saying, a drunk giant is a happy giant. So Andre would, you know, polish him off in like 1 or 2 swallows, crush him in his hand, and then fire him off the back of Hogan's head. And so they said when Hogan got up to about 40 or so, that he'd let the bus driver know they needed to find a liquor store and get Andre a couple more cases. And I just pictured like Hulk Hogan like just going, I got the shittiest job in the world, just getting pegged by Andre beer cans like every minute or two as they flew up the highway. Yeah, Andre was incredible.
Well, my little Andre story, and for the life of me, I need to dig through the last few boxes of stuff from my childhood. But I was in high school. I was like 8th or 9th grader, maybe, I guess. And I was in Kansas City at a youth conference, 4-H conference down there, and we stayed at the old Mulebach Hotel. And we had some kind of function. And when we came back to the hotel in this big old lobby, Andre the Giant was checking into the hotel. And I just like, oh my God. And he really was bigger than what I ever imagined.
Oh.
And so I crept up behind him and I turned back to back behind him. And one of my friends took a picture of me standing back to back. And you could see Andre the Giant all the way around me. I mean, he was just this massive human. When he would hold on to a 12-ounce beer can.
Oh,
yeah, you couldn't even see it. And
those are the tall boys.
Yeah, and you know, it's those big guys like that. Gary Albright was a heavyweight at Nebraska.
I was there when he was there.
Gary was a great guy. I met Gary when Gary was a senior in high school. I was wrestling out at the University of Montana. I was a freshman out there. And they brought Gary in on a recruiting trip to Montana. And it was just a courtesy. And it was only because there were 2 guys from the same high school on our team that Gary was going to graduate from. And he just looked at it as an opportunity to come and party. And I'll never forget this. He was an 18-year-old kid. He weighed north of 300 pounds then.
Yeah.
And 18-year-old kid. And friends of ours had a trailer. They lived off campus in a trailer. And we were just kind of hanging out there waiting for Gary and the couple of the other wrestlers there to show up. And in they come. And they had 4 cases of Rainier beer. They walked in with 4 cases of Rainier beer. And, you know, they kind of put 2 in their fridge. They put one down over kind of where we were sitting. And Gary had his own. And Gary just went and sat in a lazy boy, and he proceeded to drink the whole damn case of beer right there. I mean, and he wasn't sharing, but it was gone. And, you know, the other 4 or 5 of us, you know, we had 3 cases of beer and we couldn't polish that off. So, yeah.
I'll tell you this, if you want to enjoy, and I'm telling you what, parts of this just made me cry, is they have a video on YouTube, and it's like today cast members from The Princess Bride talking about working and hanging out with Andre the Giant. And they just speak of him like this was, you can just tell they all love the guy to death. God, what was it? His back was in such horrible shape. He made that movie, I think, before he got his back surgery. And so William Goldman, the screenwriter, had actually written the novel Princess Bride with Andre pictured for that part. And so, but he couldn't do any of these big, strong guy things because his back was in such lousy shape. But Wallace Shawn, he was the little bald guy who's like, inconceivable. And you keep on using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Well, he, in real life, he had just a crippling fear of heights. So, they're not actually going up this like 600-foot cliff or whatever, but they are going to, they're going to make it look like Andre is climbing, but they're going to pull him up like 10 or 20 feet. And Wallace Shawn, there they are, and they've got him kind of strapped to Andre, which you don't really see in the movie. And they start going off the ground, and they said Wallace Shawn just started like shaking uncontrollably. He didn't say anything, but he just started shaking uncontrollably because he was so frightened. And they said Andre felt him, reached over, patted him on the head, and just said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of you." And said that, and like all of a sudden he goes, and I wasn't afraid anymore. It's like a guy that size tells you. And they said that Andre loved hanging around with actors more than anything because he said actors are just such creative, goofy people. They loved him so much, and he said he loved hanging around with them because here's this 7'5", 500-pound guy, and they just treated him like anybody else. They were all so weird in their own ways. He just said he never felt more at home than with these guys. And the last one, he loved to drink all the damn time, and he started taking who were the co-stars? Mandy Patinkin and Carrie Ellis. Andre started taking those guys out drinking late. So he's rolling back with them at 2 or 3 in the morning, and they got to get up at 6 in the morning to start shooting. And Rob Reiner like came up to him finally and begged him because he said the makeup people can't work with them. These guys are so shot, still half drunk. You're bringing them in. They look terrible. Please, 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 please get them home early or just don't go out. And he's like, patted him on the, no problem. And then went drinking with him again because nobody told Andre what he could or couldn't do. And if you watch the sword fight up at the top of the cliff there between Ellis and Patinkin, you look at Patinkin and some of the close-ups, and that is a just ungodly hungover man. He is pale. He is sweating like crazy from his face, more than he should be in a scene like that. And when I watched it again after that story, I'm like, Mandy Patinkin filming this scene is just in pain right now. His head is pounding. He's got the drunk sweats. And there's just so much stuff. But if you can, all you got to do is Princess Bride cast Andre the Giant, and I'm telling you, it's funny, it's sad, it's really sweet.
Just a couple more. We're just a smidge over an hour. We're going to wrap it up here. But Vince Watson says, does Nash plan on wrestling the entire season, or will spring ball start before it's over? Spring ball might start. It'll be close. I know they pushed the spring game back a little bit later this year. But it kind of would depend upon how far he advances. I gotta think if the agreement is that he joined the team as a member of the team, that the football staff is going to allow him to complete the season. But I don't know for sure. Who knows. Nebraska is a more competitive wrestling team with him in the lineup. He's only had the one match. Big Ten is the strongest wrestling conference out there. It'll be interesting to see. So anyway, I'll tell you what, we're going to wrap it up. Andy, hey, thanks for coming in tonight. It's always fun hearing your stories and then listening to your perspective. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to put a little foreshadowing here. We will be announcing it a little bit later on, but the staff of CornNation is planning to show up in Lincoln at a baseball game this year, and we'll get more details out. And Andy came down last year, and we had a blast hanging out in the parking lot and at the game
got everybody.
Yeah. So once we start getting dates out on this, we'd encourage you all maybe to mark it on your calendar. And if you can come down to Lincoln, John's talked about the Iowa Hawkeye series and doing it on one of those games. And it's you'll find Andy a very entertaining gentleman to have conversation with. So with that being said, we're going to call it good here. Thank you all for joining us. Hopefully John is feeling a little bit better. Hopefully he's on tomorrow nights. Tomorrow nights. Is today Wednesday? No, Tuesday.
Today's Tuesday.
The Thursday night. Hopefully he's on the Thursday night podcast. So,
well, if I may, thanks for having me. I always have a blast here. And yeah, beware bringing up Andre the Giant, because there's a ton of those stories. We can work him into Nebraska all you want.
There you go. Well, hey, good night, Andy.
Night, everybody.